welcome. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Gregor and I'm going to help you to master 3 tracks today in LMU. The second one turned actually into my favorite, and I think it's just amazing. So let's get right into it. The first track we are going to look at is Imola for the LMGT3 Sprint Championship series. So we are here in a wonderful Porsche, and I'm going to start now the lap. So here already, although it's flat out, it's important that we stay here on the left side, here past the curb. So we just shorten the line we drive. Then here on the right side, we don't take here the tarmac stripe, but we take here the area where the grass is not growing as a reference point. So that's where we brake. You see it quite well. Then go to the right side to maximize here the curb when we go for the entry, because those curbs have a bit more grip than the tarmac. So every time you drive from them off to the tarmac, you get like a small rotation boost, which is really great. And then you try to cut as much as the track limit allows you here and here too. So again, shortest distance, and then really crucial, try to not run too wide here on the exit, because if you do, you have like major issues getting like the next corner down without understeering wide here. So now for the next chicane, what do? We have here the Goodyear sign as a reference point for the braking. You can also take the 51, which is a bit more consistent, because, you know, in some races, people go off here and then those Goodyear signs, you know, fly away. And yeah, this is why I would recommend here the 50 board. So go to the right side here, brake just before the 51. Cut as much as we can. Then a bit of brake pressure here to slow the car down, and then small trail braking to get the car rotated on the power at the apex. Maximize the curb here as much as you can, because it allows you to carry more corner speed. Just be careful, don't touch the gravel, because it will just then cost you all the time you gained from the from the higher minimum speed and exit. It will just drop all if you touch the gravel, because you break your acceleration phase. Now, really important, don't rest. We need to bring the car over as quick as possible to the right side. And here we use the Bosch or the 50-meter marker again as a reference point. So after we've passing that, we start to brake, trail brake till the apex, let the car, you know, plant itself, and then when the corner opens up, we open the steering, go onto the power, maximize the track. Now for the next corner, we try to stay already here on the right side, and then you can use the 50-meter board, but what I do is I take again this area where the grass isn't growing as a reference to brake, because it's even better. Cut the track here at the apex a bit. It helps you to just make the corner more open, and then you can go on the power and run wide. Now for one of the toughest sequences here, Aqua Minerale, you go onto the curb, you lift, use the brake a bit to get the front around, and then once the car is basically almost parallel to the white line, we start to brake again, use the rotation of the car, and then go on the power to stop it and exit the corner. Really important here on the exit, use the curb. But again, be careful with the gravel, because it will give you a cut and then your lap time is invalidated. Now for the famous chicane, what do? First of all, again, we need to maximize the entry. So we drive here over the curb, like this. And then as soon as we are on the curb, you see quite well, we start to brake. We use the ABS here to slow the car really down. Try to cut as much as the track limit allows you here over the curb. For example, currently I drove this line here. If I zoom just slightly out. And the same applies here. One thing I would recommend you to be careful about is, like, even if we don't just focus on this series here, but generally on this track, if you run in a league or somewhere where you have strict track limits in quali, it could happen that, because this cut here is always going green, you know, it could happen that you would get an invalidation quali, but in the race it would be normal again. So just be careful, like on the second one, to not trigger any cut if you, or to not trigger any cut detection if you have like a strict qualifying session. So this is like a small tip from my side. But other than that, the same applies like in the other corner here. Cut as much as you can, and then accelerate after you've passed the curb, basically. and make sure to use the exit curb too. Another like small tip what I can give you is if you struggle with the direction change to get the car rotated, try to tap the brake just when you go, you know, to the left. It just helps you massively to get some front end bite. Then you have no issues on getting on the power early. Now the straight is quite simple. You stay here on the left and then you turn a bit earlier than some might think here to the inside, because you want to be on the curb here on the right side when you start to brake. What do we use as a braking reference point? We have the wonderful 100 meter board here at the top, and after we've passed that, that's where we start to brake. Quite late turn because the corner is closing up on the exit, so you don't want to turn in too early. Try to cut here the curb a bit to help you pull the car around. Go on the power. Maximize the track here on the exit because it really helps you to open up this last corner. And yeah, tap on the brake here just to get some weight onto the front axle to help you get that bite. And then when we are here at the apex, we can cut the curb again, as you see here. And as soon as the corner opens up, we hit our apex, open the steering and accelerate out of the corner. And now, small tip for quali, which gains you maybe only hundreds or thousands, but at the end it could also make a difference, right, in positions or in the positioning. So don't run here wide, try to stay here tight. Exactly like this. And that's a lap around Imola. Let's just jump quickly into Delta so I can show you some really important sequences. So here you see exactly what I mean. So we go into the brakes, use a bit of trail braking here initially to get their car rotated because it rotates quite a lot. We don't need to do too much. Then we drive over the inside curb here, brake again, slow the car down, finish the rotation for the second part. And then here I'm touching the brake just a bit to still get a bit more rotation before the apex, and then bam, on the power. The second corner sequence I want to show you is Aqua Minerale. So we go here again, mark this area, and that's exactly what I wanted to show you. So initially, you see, we just tap slightly the brake here to just get the front end to bite for the right-hander, so we don't need to brake even more. And especially as we arrive there at high speed, it's just the braking input is way more powerful than if you would just steer more. And then one small tip before the tip on the brakes again before the apex, and then we wait, and then once we can open up the steering a bit for the braking, that's where we do the majority basically of our braking, as you see. And then here at the apex, we try to control like the stop of the rotation with the throttle. So once we know, hey, we've done the rotation, we go on the power, just hesitate slightly till we can really open up the steering, and then we exit the corner. The next track we have a look at is Qatar. It's WEC Experience, and spoiler alert, also for the special event on the weekend. And why did I pick now the hypercar for this, track? Because I think if there is one combo where you can really experience like the sensation of a hypercar, how much quicker it is than a GT3, it's this combo. And for the people who drive the hypercar, it will be helpful. And for the people, as I said, who maybe want to try this week, jumping from the GT3 onto the hypercar, this can be like a really helpful guide. So this is why I picked this combo. And on top of that, guys, if you enjoy those kind of content, right, the lab guides, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what your plan for the current week is. But yeah, let's continue now with the track. So here for turn 1, what we try to do is we follow already the white line here, and once the curb appears on the left, we drive on it. We use here on the 100 meter level the Rolex sign as a braking point. If this is destroyed, we can still use the white line. After this, we just start to brake. And important, we try to brake into the apex almost, right? So we don't want to brake parallel to the white line here. We want to point the car slightly towards the inside and then start to brake. So you see, late apex, use the curb here to rotate the car on the power, open the steering, maximize the road, and now, really important, you have no time for a brake. Like, there's no point where your steering wheel will be neutral. So we continue to steer here now to the right side, drive over the curb to open up the corner, and again, late apex, try to hug the curb here on the inside again, because it helps you to pull the car around. And here, that's easy flat, you can just cut the curb slightly. Now, really important for the next braking, don't be afraid of the curb. The curb is your friend here, so drive here onto the left. The second DHL board or white line is on the floor here, is our reference point. So when we pass that, we basically brake. And it's, I would say, if I would need to tell you, between those, the last and the second board, basically. Cut again here on the power, let the car run wide, and then once you arrive here, that's a tip from my side, once you arrive here on the gravel level, where it ends, that's where I start to lift again for the next corner. Use the curb on the inside. And now bring the car over to the right. Use the curb also, during the braking process. It helps to open up the corner. Be careful here, it's a bit bumpy. And I think you brake also slightly downhill, so it's important that you are really cautious with the braking, so you don't brake too hard for too long, otherwise you'll lock up and then you miss the apex. So that's another tip I can give you for this, part. So trail braking till we reach the late apex and open the steering on the power. Be careful there at the apex, you have a bit of, also a big bump, or the road is a bit more bumpy, and you need to be careful that if you have too much steering, or if you do too aggressive on the power, you can spin there quite easily, so be careful there. Now for the next right-hander, we drive onto the left curb here. The Bosch and the white line here are our reference point, so when we pass this, we start to brake. And really important, this is not a hard braking zone, so our initial peak braking pressure is a bit lower, and we try to trail brake really long for late apex here. Use the curb on the inside to help the car rotate and accelerate. And cut as much as we can on the curb. Then we lift. Use a small minimal tap on the brake, as you see here, is 1 or 2%. To get the front bite and get the car around the corner. Then we go on the power, but lift earlier than we think, because we want to bring the car over to the right side to open up the next left-hander, right? So you see on the power, and then we coast actually a bit, and then back when we are on the right side here, where the tarmac is again starting, that's where I start to brake. And you see not a lot of high peak braking pressure, Why? Because we don't really need to slow the car down. It's more just getting the rotation done. And here, aim for the inside curb. Go on the power. It helps you, bring the car around. Don't try to run too much here onto the exit curb, because if I go here into the third person, you see it's 3D. So here, you won't have a lot of grip loss, but the further you go, the less contact the tire will have, and then you will have less grip on under accelerating, which then can cost lap time. So bring the car back here onto the left side. And now, for one of the craziest sequences you can experience in LMU, the triple right, following with a left-hander. So here you go onto the left. And once the you have the color change or the white marker here. That's where you start to lift. Use a bit of the brake to get the front in if you need. So this is like always, you know, depending on how good your entry was, you need to use the brake or not. And always aim for those inside curbs here because they help you to pull the car on. So again, inside curb, run wide, and then we lift before we are, you know, at the end of the gravel basically. Inside curb again for rotation on the power, and then the same here again. At the end of the gravel, we start to brake even here now because the corner is a bit more tight. Trail braking at the apex on the power, maximizing the curb, and you see like how on the edge we are here. Like, look. We're just about not hitting the gravel, which is crazy to think about. And another tip I can give you for the sequence is try to always look ahead. And if you want to use reference points for turning or lifting, try to use them in the peripheral vision. Because if you have to look at those, you will immediately lose time because you won't get your entry right. Like everything happens at such a high speed here. Once you look away from where you want to go, you just increase your rate by, you know, by doing mistakes like by a lot. Now for the next right-hander, bring the car over the right, brake a bit. Basically before the Michelin board or the white line now for a change. Not hard again, just a bit slow down the car, and the rest is again purely for rotation. Here at the apex, clip the curb to, you know, again, that the car gets pulled around. And then, you know, maximize the track on the exit. Now for the last corner, quite easy. Bring the car already on the left side. You can use the curb while braking. And we brake basically between the last and second Michelin board. So you see, we pass this one and then we brake between those. And then late apex, really important. Because if you drive an early apex here, you will just be waiting on the power to accelerate. Because the corner is opening up quite late. So we need to drive a late apex here. So the corner is easy, almost like an easy flat out application once we can go onto the power. Yeah, that was a lap around Qatar in the hypercar. Let's jump quickly into Delta. The first sequence I want to really show you is basically here. This, you know, long right-hander and then with the left and the right. So let's go quickly there. And maybe we can also include actually the following left because it's one of the most important sequences on the track. So here, that's what I mean. Peak braking pressure is not really high, right? We are like 60% and then really long trail braking phase till we almost arrive at the apex. Then we are basically done with the rotation, so we don't need to use the brake. We're just waiting patiently here, as you see on the right side. So the corner starts to open up. That's where we go onto the power. You can go here a bit more aggressive on the power than you think because the TC helps you a lot. And then here for the right-hander, you see we stay first for the preparation as close as possible on the left, and then we lift aggressively. Just use 3-4% here of brake to get the front bite, and then on the power, and then really quick out of it again so we can bring the car over. So we sacrifice the exit here slightly to have a way better entry and exit for the following corner. Bring the car over to the right, trail brake, and then you can go earlier than you think on the power because the corner starts to open up and you just have the downforce helping you. Last but not least, let's have a look at the triple right with the left-hander here. Just so you see like how incredible it is to drive, right? So here we lift, just have a bit of a braking input at again 3-4% to get the car around. Then flat out again, lift aggressive again. Here literally almost no braking at all. And then for the last right-hander here, just 40% trail braking till the apex. And then on the power, you see here is a bit of, you know, management from my side because I don't want to run, of course, into the gravel. And then here for the left-hander, just 55%. And then a bit of trail braking here while we start to turn in to get the car around. But the car rotates so much by itself here, you don't really need to use the brake almost at all here for rotation, funny enough. Last but not least, we look at Monza for LMGT3 fixed. So let's get right into it. For turn 1, we use the 150 meter board as a reference point. So just when we pass that one, you see we start to brake. Really long, really hard, 100%, because we want to, slow the car down as quick as possible. Only I think from third gear onwards we start to trail off. And really important here, late turn in. So don't try to turn in too early because we want to open up the exit of this chicane. So really stay here quite long, parallel to the white line. And then once here the green astro appears on the left, that's where you can think about, turning in. Now here, really important, don't try to run here too wide to the left side because it will compromise your exit quite heavily. So yeah, use the brake here just a bit to get some front bite. So it helps you a lot with the rotation here, and then once you hit the apex, you can open up the steering and go onto the power. And for the next section, it's not really that special. You just try to stay tight as long as you can, so you don't travel like additional road. And now for the next braking zone, we try to aim for the 100 meter marker. Or if you want and prefer like a marker which you need to pass and then to brake, you can use the orange wall here on the right side or the tarmac stripe. So once we pass that, we start to brake. And again, same principle like turn 1, quite a late entry because you want to open up the chicane again. So late entry, here we try to even cut the curb because it helps to open up the entire sequence. And then here you can use the throttle modulation to help the car cope with the curb. So you drive on the curb with throttle, so the front is higher, right? And if the front drove over the curb and the rear is, if the rear now needs to do the job, then you go out of the throttle because it raises the rear right side again, and that can help you here with the curb. Maximize the track on the exit. And now for the next corner, we try to stay as left as possible. You use here the orange painted guardrail as a reference point. No full braking in the sense of that we try to hit like 60-70% initial peak braking pressure, because if we go harder, we run too much into the ABS. So trail brake until the apex, and at the apex on the power, maximize the track. Be really careful here with the track limits because they are so strict. Now for the next one, we brake before the 50 meter marker. Here we can brake a bit harder because we aren't forced to turn in that early, like in the first LSMO. Trail braking till the apex, at the apex, aggressively on the power. Again, careful with the track limit. And now it's all about keeping the car here now onto the left, opening up now the steering so the car drives naturally over to the right side. And then we prepare ourselves for Scari. So where do we brake? We try to brake after the orange guardrail again. So at the tarmac stripe is basically our reference point. So when we pass that, we brake. Third gear, cut as much as the track limit allows us to do here. Here, a bit of a lift before we go to the right side, so we really just can keep the car here on the right. And then drive this corner flat. Like, this is the entire purpose, of the, two previous corners. It's to drive them in a way that we can drive this corner flat. So we sacrifice it maybe slightly potentially before, but we will gain now till Parabolica basically time. Because we cut here the track, here we do the lift, and then back on the power, and we don't need to lift again till the next braking zone basically. Here it's also a bit tricky with the cut, so that's also something you need to be aware of. Do not be too greedy here. And then, last but not least, Parabolica, which is like really one of the toughest corners also on this track, because so many times you just got the lap till that perfect, and then it's all about Parabolica. And the problem regarding this corner is it will penalize you if you underdrive it, so if you are too careful, but on the other side, if you overdrive it, your entire lap is gone too. So it's really important to nail those, reference points here. So what do here? We use the flag indicator as a reference point, so that's why we start to brake. And then important, like, you try to point the car already during the braking process into the inside, because you see, we have a bit of camber here, and camber always means like we can get more corner speed if we use it. So it's just like a grip boost. So that's why I want to bring the car here on the inside, late apex, and then we can open up the steering, go onto the power, and really be careful. Try to not run here into the gravel. It will, I think, give you even a cut when the lap is gone. And now then get back to the inside. And that was a lap around Monza. I mean, Monza has not really a lot of corners, but when you have those chicanes, it just really matters that you have your reference points. Otherwise, you will end up being really inconsistent and lose time. Let's jump quickly now into Delta so I can show you Ascari. Like, this lift here is basically necessary for us to drive the second part here completely flat out. You see, I have here a bit of a confidence lift on the exit because I don't want to get a cut. So ideally, you don't want to have that. But it just shows you really, like, even the line here, especially that part, how important it is to sacrifice here the exit slightly. If you would look at this corner here in isolation, you'd normally run here then wide to the left. But we don't do that. We try to stay here to the right so we really can maximize here the entire time till Parabolica. I hope you enjoyed the lap guides and they help you to improve on those tracks. If you did, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Other than that, I say thank you again and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.